Have you ever wondered what happens inside a beehive when temperatures drop to a bone-chilling -20 degrees Celsius? Imagine 50,000 bees trapped in complete darkness. No heating systems, no external help, just nature's incredible survival mechanism at work. While you're wrapped in blankets drinking hot coffee, these tiny creatures are performing one of nature's most fascinating feats of endurance. Inside 50 Amish beehives, something extraordinary is happening right now. The bees aren't sleeping. They aren't hibernating. They're doing something far more remarkable. What you're about to discover will completely change how you see these amazing insects. Let's dive in. Welcome to Amish Forge, where we uncover the timeless wisdom of traditional living. Today, we're exploring one of nature's most incredible winter survival stories, what really happens inside. Amish beehives. When winter strikes hard at -20 degrees Celsius, the Amish have been keeping bees for generations, using methods passed down through centuries, and their approach to winter beekeeping is nothing short of brilliant. Unlike modern beekeepers who rely on technology and artificial heating, the Amish trust nature's own design. In this video, we'll take you inside 50 active hives, reveal the hidden world of winter bee clusters, and show you exactly how these remarkable insects survive the harshest conditions, from their heat generation techniques to their honey consumption patterns. You're about to witness something truly extraordinary. Let's begin this fascinating journey. The Amish winter beekeeping philosophy. When winter approaches and temperatures plummet to -20 degrees Celsius, most modern beekeepers rush to install heaters, insulation wraps, and temperature monitors in their hives. But the Amish take a completely different path, one that's been tested and perfected over hundreds of years. Their philosophy is beautifully simple, yet profoundly effective. Trust the bees, trust nature, and interfere only when absolutely necessary. The Amish believe that bees have survived ice ages, countless winters, and extreme conditions long before humans started keeping them. This deep respect for natural design shapes everything they do. Instead of fighting nature with technology, they work alongside it. Their hives are positioned with careful consideration of wind direction, sun exposure, and natural shelter. You'll find Amish apiaries tucked near tree lines that block harsh northern winds, or positioned on south-facing slopes where morning sun can warm the hive entrances first. What makes their approach truly remarkable is the absence of dependency on electricity or modern equipment. There are no heated hive boxes, no electric moisture removers, no automated ventilation systems. Every solution comes from observation, experience, and traditional wisdom. The Amish beekeeper learns to read subtle signs: the sound of a healthy cluster, the weight distribution of honey stores, the activity level at the hive entrance on warmer winter days. This minimalist approach actually strengthens bee colonies. Over generations, without artificial heating, only the strongest, most resilient colonies survive winter. These survivors pass on superior genetics. Bees that naturally produce more heat, cluster more efficiently, and manage resources better. It's natural selection working in real time, creating tougher, more winter-hardy bees year after year. The Amish also maintain smaller, more manageable apiaries compared to commercial operations. Instead of hundreds of hives, they keep 30 to 60 colonies, allowing for individual attention to each hive. This personal relationship with their bees means they notice problems earlier, understand each colony's unique personality, and can respond with precisely what's needed, whether that's emergency feeding, entrance adjustment, or simply leaving. The bees alone. Their preparation begins in late summer, not in autumn, when winter is knocking at the door. They ensure each hive has built up massive honey reserves, strengthened its population, and eliminated weaknesses. By the time snow falls and temperatures drop to -20 degrees Celsius, the Amish beekeeper's work is mostly done. The bees take over, executing the survival strategy that's programmed into their very DNA. Supported by thoughtful human preparation, but never dependent on it. Pre-winter hive preparation. The secret to winter survival doesn't begin when the first snowflake falls. It starts in the golden days of late summer, when flowers still bloom and bees are at their most productive. The Amish understand this timing perfectly, and their pre-winter preparation is a masterclass in foresight and natural beekeeping wisdom. By August, experienced Amish beekeepers are already assessing each hive's readiness for the brutal months ahead. The first critical factor is honey stores. A strong colony needs between 60 to 80 pounds of honey to survive a harsh winter. At minus 20 degrees Celsius, this isn't just food, it's fuel for the incredible heat-generating process we'll explore later. The Amish carefully inspect frames, checking that the upper boxes are packed with capped honey, while leaving the brood area below for the winter cluster to form. But honey alone isn't enough. Population strength matters just as much. A weak colony, even with abundant honey, will struggle to generate sufficient heat. The Amish ensured their hives enter autumn with robust populations of young, healthy bees, not the worn-out summer foragers, but fresh generations born in September and October. These late-season bees are the true winter warriors. With longer lifespans and fat reserves that help them survive months without fresh pollen, hive insulation follows next, but not in the way you might expect. The Amish don't wrap hives in foam or electric blankets. Instead, they work with natural materials that breathe. Many add burlap wrapping around the outer walls, which blocks wind while allowing moisture to escape. Some pack straw or dry leaves between double-walled hive boxes, creating natural insulation that regulates temperature without trapping harmful condensation. Entrance management is another crucial step. During summer, hives have wide-open entrances for maximum airflow and bee traffic. But winter demands different priorities. The Amish install entrance reducers, small wooden blocks that shrink the opening to just a few centimeters. This serves multiple purposes. It reduces cold drafts, prevents mice from invading the warm hive, and makes it easier for guard bees to defend the entrance. Yet it's never completely sealed. Some airflow remains essential for moisture control. Ventilation deserves special attention in Amish preparation. While modern beekeepers might install screened inner covers or ventilation boxes, the Amish often simply shim the inner cover slightly or drill small upper entrances. This creates a chimney effect where warm, moist air rises and escapes from the top, while fresh, cold air enters at the bottom entrance. It's simple physics serving the bees' needs perfectly. Finally, the Amish position each hive thoughtfully for winter. They ensure hives are level or tilted slightly forward, so any condensation drips toward the entrance, not back into the cluster. They check that hives are elevated off the ground to prevent snow accumulation and improve drainage. The winter cluster formation. When temperatures drop below 10 degrees Celsius, something extraordinary begins inside the hive, the formation of the winter cluster, one of nature's most remarkable survival mechanisms. This isn't random crowding or simple huddling. It's a precisely organized living furnace that will keep thousands of bees alive through months of frozen darkness at minus 20 degrees Celsius. The cluster formation starts gradually. As autumn nights grow colder, bees begin gathering closer together, abandoning the outer edges of the hive and consolidating in the center frames. They instinctively choose frames that still contain some honey. Their fuel source must be immediately accessible throughout winter. The queen, being the colony's most valuable member, is positioned at the very center of this cluster, surrounded by the densest concentration of worker bees. The cluster's structure is brilliantly engineered with two distinct layers. The outer shell consists of tightly packed bees, pressed together so closely that barely any air can pass between them. These shell bees form a living insulation blanket, their bodies creating a barrier against the freezing temperatures just inches away. Meanwhile, the inner core remains looser, with bees able to move more freely, vibrate their flight muscles, and generate heat. Temperature management within this cluster is astoundingly precise. The core maintains a steady 35 degrees Celsius even when outside temperatures plunge to minus 20 degrees Celsius. That's a 55-degree difference. The outer shell, however, operates at much cooler temperatures, sometimes dropping to just minus 10 degrees Celsius. This gradient is intentional and crucial. If the entire cluster tried to maintain 35 degrees Celsius throughout, they'd burn through their honey stores in weeks and starve long before spring. The cluster isn't static, it's a dynamic, breathing organism. Bees rotate positions constantly. Those on the cold outer shell eventually work their way into the warm core to recover and refuel on honey, while warmed-up core bees migrate outward to take their turn on shell duty. This rotation ensures no bee freezes to death, and the workload of heat generation is shared equally across thousands of individuals. Size matters dramatically in cluster formation. A strong colony of 40,000 to 50,000 bees can form a robust cluster roughly the size of a basketball, easily maintaining life-sustaining temperatures, but a weak colony with only 15,000 bees struggles to create enough mass for effective insulation. This is why the Amish prioritize strong populations before winter. It's literally the difference between survival and death. The cluster also moves slowly throughout winter, migrating upward through the hive as they consume honey from the frames surrounding them. This vertical movement is critical. If they move too slowly, they'll be trapped below abundant honey stores and starve despite being surrounded by food. If they move too quickly, they'll exhaust their reserves before spring. The Amish account for this by ensuring honey is distributed throughout multiple frames in the upper hive boxes. Heat generation mechanism. Inside the winter cluster at -20 degrees Celsius, something that seems almost impossible is happening. Tens of thousands of bees are generating enough heat to maintain a tropical 35 degrees Celsius core temperature without any external heating, without fire, and without the high metabolism of mammals. How do they accomplish this remarkable feat? The answer lies in one of nature's most efficient biological heating systems. The primary heat source is muscle vibration, but not the kind you might imagine. These bees aren't flying or moving around frantically. Instead, they're performing what scientists call asynchronous muscle contraction. They vibrate their powerful flight muscles without actually moving their wings. Imagine revving a car engine in neutral. All that energy converts directly to heat without producing movement. That's exactly what winter bees do, and they can maintain this for hours at a time. The energy cost is enormous. Each bee engaged in heat production burns through sugar at an incredible rate, which is why those massive honey stores are absolutely essential. A single bee generating heat might consume the equivalent of several drops of honey per day. Multiply that by thousands of active bees, and you understand why a colony needs 60 to 80 pounds of honey reserves. They're literally burning fuel to stay alive, just like a furnace burns wood or gas. What makes this system even more fascinating is its precision control. The cluster doesn't generate constant heat at maximum capacity. Instead, bees regulate output based on real-time temperature sensing. When the core temperature drops even a degree or two below optimal, more bees begin vibrating. When it rises above 35 degrees Celsius, they reduce activity. This thermostat-like regulation happens continuously, automatically, without any central coordinator or command structure. The heat distribution follows elegant physics. Hot air rises, so the warmth generated by vibrating bees in the core naturally flows upward and outward. This creates circulation patterns within the cluster. Warm air moving up and out, cooler air being pulled in from below and the sides. Tightly packed outer shell traps this heat, preventing it from escaping into the frigid hive environment. Different bees contribute different amounts to heat generation based on their position and condition. Young, well-fed bees with full honey stomachs can vibrate longer and more intensely. Older or weakened bees contribute what they can, but primarily benefit from the heat others produce. It's a collective effort where the strong support the weak, ensuring colony survival rather than individual survival. Temperature gradients within the cluster are carefully maintained. The queen, at the very center, experiences consistent warmth, allowing her to conserve energy for spring egg laying. The brood area, if any winter brood exists, stays around a -35 degrees Celsius. Moving outward, temperatures gradually drop, 30 degrees Celsius, 25 degrees Celsius, 20 degrees Celsius, until reaching the shell at perhaps 10 degrees Celsius. This gradient maximizes efficiency, heating only what needs heating while conserving precious honey stores for the long winter ahead. Honey consumption patterns. Honey isn't just food for winter bees, it's aviation fuel, heating oil, and life insurance all combined into golden liquid stored in wax cells. Understanding how bees consume this precious resource during winter at -20 degrees Celsius reveals both the brilliance of their survival strategy and the critical importance of proper pre-winter preparation by Amish beekeepers. Daily consumption rates are staggering. A strong colony maintaining a healthy cluster at -20 degrees Celsius can consume approximately half a pound to a full pound of honey per day. That might not sound like much until you calculate it across 4 or 5 months of winter. Suddenly, those 60 to 80 pounds of stored honey make perfect sense. Any less, and the colony risks starvation with spring flowers just weeks away, surrounded by empty comb where abundance once existed. The consumption pattern isn't random. Bees cluster around and within frames containing honey, feeding constantly to fuel their heat generation. They can't break cluster to retrieve honey from distant frames, because that would require individual bees to venture into the lethally cold outer areas of the hive. Instead, the entire cluster moves slowly and deliberately, migrating toward fresh honey stores as they exhaust nearby cells. This movement creates a fascinating pattern through winter. If you could watch time-lapse footage from inside the hive, you'd see the cluster starting in the lower brood box in early winter, gradually shifting upward as they consume honey from the frame surrounding them. By midwinter, they've typically moved into the upper boxes where the Amish strategically placed the heaviest honey stores. By late winter, they might be in the very top frames, having eaten their way through dozens of pounds of honey. Temperature dramatically affects consumption rates. During a brief warm spell, when temperatures rise above freezing, the cluster relaxes slightly and consumption drops. The bees need less energy to maintain core temperature. But when a brutal cold snap drives temperatures down to minus 30 degrees Celsius or minus 35 degrees Celsius, consumption can double as bees vibrate furiously to generate enough heat for survival. This is why unpredictable winter weather is more dangerous than consistently cold. Temperature's variable conditions make it harder for bees to budget their honey reserves. The Amish understand these patterns intimately, which is why they conduct midwinter hive checks by hefting, lifting the back of the hive to assess weight. A hive that feels surprisingly light in January is in serious trouble. There might still be 8 weeks of winter remaining, but honey stores are dangerously low. This is when emergency feeding becomes necessary, typically in the form of sugar fondant placed directly above the cluster where bees can access it. Without breaking formation, critical thresholds exist that determine survival or death. A colony that enters winter with 50 pounds of honey might survive a mild winter, but perish during a harsh one. Moisture management inside hive. While freezing temperatures get all the attention, moisture is actually the silent killer of winter bee colonies. At minus 20 degrees Celsius outside, you might think water isn't a problem. Everything's frozen solid. Wrong. Inside the winter cluster, where it's a warm 35 degrees Celsius, tens of thousands of bees are breathing, metabolizing honey, and releasing moisture into the air every single second. Managing this humidity is absolutely critical for survival. Here's what's happening. Bees consume honey to generate heat, and this metabolic process produces carbon dioxide and water vapor as byproducts. A strong colony can release several cups of water into the hive atmosphere throughout a long winter. Where does this moisture go? It rises as warm, humid air toward the hive ceiling. When it contacts the cold inner walls and roof, remember, it's minus 20 degrees Celsius outside. Condensation forms immediately. Water droplets appear, grow, and eventually rain back down onto the cluster below. This condensation rainfall is devastating. Wet bees in cold conditions die quickly. Their insulating body hair becomes matted and useless when soaked. Worse yet, wet bees can't vibrate their muscles effectively to generate heat, so they freeze. A cluster dealing with constant moisture dripping from above faces exponentially higher mortality. Even if individual bees survive the wetness, prolonged humidity encourages mold growth inside the hive, contaminating honey stores and creating toxic conditions. The Amish solution to moisture management is elegantly simple and grounded in physics. They create ventilation pathways that allow humid air to escape before it condenses. A slightly shimmied inner cover creates a small gap at the hive top, and many Amish beekeepers drill a small upper entrance hole near the roof. This establishes a chimney effect. Warm, moist air rises and exits through the top opening while fresh. Cold air enters through the reduced bottom entrance. This continuous air exchange might seem counterintuitive. Why let cold air in during winter? The answer is that small amounts of cold, dry air entering the hive actually help. The incoming air absorbs moisture from the cluster, becomes warm and humid, rises and exits at the top. It's a gentle but constant ventilation cycle that prevents dangerous condensation buildup without creating deadly drafts through the cluster. Absorbent materials also play a role in traditional Amish hive management. Some beekeepers place burlap newspaper or wood shavings above the inner cover in an empty super. These materials absorb excess moisture that rises to the hive's highest point, preventing it from condensing on cold surfaces and dripping back down. As the materials become saturated, they can be replaced during warmer winter days when brief inspections are possible. The bees themselves contribute to moisture management through behavioral adaptations. When condensation does form on the inner walls, worker bees will actually consume the water droplets, recycling them back into the cluster's metabolism. This behavior, while helpful, can't keep pace with severe condensation problems, which is why proper ventilation design is essential. Queen survival strategy. The queen bee is the heart of the colony, the irreplaceable mother of every single bee in the hive. Her survival through brutal -20°C winter temperatures isn't just important, it's absolutely essential. If the queen dies, the colony dies, no matter how much honey remains or how many workers survive. The Amish understand this completely, and nature has evolved an extraordinary protection system that keeps the queen safe through the darkest, coldest months. Unlike her summer role, where she's constantly laying eggs, traveling across frames, and being fed by attendants throughout the hive, the winter queen enters a state of semi-dormant. Her egg-laying slows dramatically or stops completely by late November. This isn't a problem, it's strategic. Egg production requires enormous energy and protein resources that simply aren't available in winter. By shutting down reproduction, the queen conserves her strength and the colony conserves precious honey stores that would otherwise feed developing brood. Her position within the winter cluster is no accident. The queen occupies the absolute center of the cluster's core, surrounded by multiple layers of worker bees. Imagine a living fortress. She's protected by thousands of loyal workers who form concentric rings around her. The innermost layer consists of her closest attendants, bees that groom her, feed her small amounts of honey, and maintain her body temperature. Beyond them are additional layers of workers, each contributing to the collective warmth that keeps the core at a steady 35°C. This central position means the queen experiences the most stable, comfortable conditions in the entire hive, while bees on the outer shell endure temperatures as low as 10°C and constant rotation duty. The queen remains in consistent tropical warmth. She's never exposed to temperature fluctuations, never required to generate her own heat through muscle vibration, and never asked to venture into the dangerous cold. Zones of the hive. The worker bee's dedication to queen protection is absolute. If the cluster must move to access new honey stores, the workers surrounding the queen move as a coordinated unit, maintaining their protective formation. She's never left alone, never exposed, never at risk. If a section of the cluster becomes dangerously cold, workers will actually sacrifice their own warmth to ensure the queen's area remains stable. Interestingly, the queen's reduced activity during winter actually extends her lifespan. Queens that survive winter emerge in spring, refreshed and ready for the explosive egg-laying demands of the new season. Some Amish beekeepers report their best queens are those that have survived multiple winters, having proven their hardiness and genetic quality through nature's toughest test. The queen's winter survival also depends on her entering winter in peak condition. The Amish ensure this by allowing strong natural queen genetics in their colonies. Weak or failing queens are replaced before winter, not during. A healthy queen entering winter dormancy with proper fat reserves and surrounded by a strong population of young workers has excellent survival odds, but an old, weakened queen in a struggling colony faces almost certain death. As winter progresses and days begin lengthening in late January or early February, something remarkable happens, even with snow still deep and temperatures still brutal. The queen responds to increasing daylight by breaking dormancy. She begins laying small amounts of eggs again, preparing the colony for spring's arrival weeks before flowers bloom. Dead bee removal process. Death is an inevitable part of winter. Colony life. Even in the healthiest, best-managed Amish hives operating at -20°C, bees die throughout the winter months. Old bees reach the end of their natural lifespan. Some succumb to cold exposure during rotation duty on the cluster shell. and others simply wear out from the constant work of heat generation. Understanding how the colony manages this mortality reveals another layer of the bees. Remarkable survival strategy. Normal winter mortality rates in a strong colony range from 10% to 20% of the population. That might sound alarming until you consider the numbers. A hive entering winter with 40,000 bees can afford to lose 8,000 and still maintain a viable cluster of 32,000 by spring. This mortality is expected, natural, and accounted for in the bees' survival strategy. Problems only arise when death rates exceed normal levels, indicating disease, starvation, or moisture problems. Dead bees present a serious hazard to the living. Colony bodies accumulating within the cluster create obstacles, harbor potential disease, and take up space needed by living bees. More critically, dead bees piling up at the hive entrance can block the only ventilation pathway, causing catastrophic condensation buildup or even suffocating the colony. This is where the undertaker bees perform their crucial winter duty. Undertaker bees are workers that specialize in corpse removal, and they continue this essential work even in brutal winter conditions. When a bee dies within the cluster, undertakers detect the body through chemical signals. Dead bees release specific pheromones that trigger removal behavior. The undertaker grabs the corpse, maneuvers it through the tightly packed cluster, and carries it toward the hive entrance. The journey from cluster center to entrance is treacherous during winter. The undertaker must pass through increasingly cold zones, eventually reaching areas where temperatures might be near freezing. This is dangerous work. Some undertaker bees become too chilled during removal duties and die themselves, becoming additional corpses requiring removal. It's a sacrifice made for the colony's greater good. Once, at the entrance, the undertaker faces a critical decision based on temperature. If it's a relatively mild winter day above freezing, she'll make a brief flight, carrying the dead bee several meters from the hive before dropping it. This prevents disease transmission and keeps the entrance clear. But at -20°C, flight is impossible, and attempting it means certain death. Instead, undertakers simply push corpses out the entrance, letting them accumulate in a pile on the landing board or the ground below. The Amish beekeepers recognize these death piles as normal and even useful. During midwinter inspections, they examine the corpses. A small pile of dead bees indicates normal attrition, but a large pile, hundreds or thousands of bodies, signals serious problems, possible starvation, disease, outbreak, or moisture crisis. The size, appearance, and location of dead bees tell experienced Amish beekeepers the story of what's happening inside without opening the hive. Entrance blockages from dead bees are perhaps the most dangerous accumulation scenario. Snow, ice, and dead bee bodies can combine to seal the entrance completely. Without ventilation, moisture builds up catastrophically inside the hive. Midwinter hive checks. The Amish approach to midwinter hive management walks a delicate balance between necessary intervention and respectful interference. Unlike modern beekeepers who might open hives, check frame by frame, or install monitoring technology, the Amish practice minimal disruption assessment techniques that have been refined over generations. At -20°C, these brief checks can literally mean the difference between colony survival and death. The primary assessment technique is called hefting, the simple act of lifting the back of the hive slightly to judge its weight. An experienced Amish beekeeper can tell immediately whether a hive has adequate honey stores remaining or if it's dangerously light. This assessment takes mere seconds and doesn't disturb the cluster inside at all. A hive that feels heavy in January is in good shape. One that lifts easily is in trouble, likely consuming its final honey reserves and facing starvation. Before spring flowers bloom. Sound assessment is the second critical technique. On relatively calm winter days, the Amish beekeeper will place his ear against the hive wall and listen carefully. A healthy cluster produces a gentle, steady humming sound, the collective vibration of thousands of bees generating heat. This sound indicates the cluster is active, maintaining temperature, and functioning normally. Silence, however, is ominous. A completely silent hive in midwinter likely indicates the colony has perished. Irregular sounds, loud buzzing, or agitated humming might signal stress, starvation, or disturbance. Visual entrance inspection provides additional valuable information without opening the hive. The Amish check that entrances remain clear of snow, ice, and dead bee blockages. They observe whether any bees are making brief cleansing flights on warmer days above 10 degrees Celsius, a sign of colony health. They look at the pile of dead bees below the entrance, assessing whether mortality seems normal or excessive. They even examine the color and consistency of bee feces on the landing board, as unusually dark or liquid droppings can indicate disease issues. Temperature also guides inspection timing. The Amish never open hives when temperatures are below freezing, unless absolutely necessary for emergency feeding. Even then, they work incredibly quickly, removing the outer cover, placing emergency fondant or sugar directly above the cluster through a hole in the inner cover and resealing everything within minutes, breaking the cluster's heat barrier when it's minus 20 degrees Celsius. Outside can chill and kill hundreds of bees instantly. Emergency feeding decisions are made based on the hefting assessment, combined with calendar timing. If a hive feels dangerously light in December or early January, the Amish no intervention is essential. They prepare sugar fondant, a thick candy-like mixture that bees can consume without water, and place it directly above the cluster location. The positioning is critical. If placed too far from the cluster, bees can't reach it without breaking formation and freezing. The fondant must sit right above where the cluster has migrated within the upper boxes. Some Amish beekeepers use an additional clever assessment technique. They press their hand against the hive's outer wall on a cold day. If they feel subtle warmth radiating through, they know the cluster is active and healthy inside. No warmth suggests the cluster is too small, too weak, or has perished entirely. Record keeping plays a role in these checks too. The Amish mentally or physically note which hives needed emergency feeding, which felt light versus heavy, and which showed concerning signs. Predator protection. Winter at minus 20 degrees Celsius might seem like a time when predators would be the least of a beekeeper's concerns, but the reality is quite different. The warmth generated inside a bee cluster, the abundant honey stores, and the relative vulnerability of a semi-dormant colony make winter hives attractive targets for various creatures, desperate for food and shelter. The Amish have developed time-tested strategies to protect their 50 hives from these persistent winter threats. Mice are perhaps the most dangerous winter predators. As temperatures drop, field mice seek warm shelter and discover that beehives offer both heat and food. A single mouse entering a hive can be catastrophic. They build nests directly inside the hive boxes, often in corners near the cluster where it's warmest. They consume honey stores, chew through wax comb, urinate, and defecate throughout the hive, and their presence stresses the bees enormously. In extreme cases, mice will actually attack and eat bees themselves. The Amish prevention strategy is simple but effective. Entrance reducers installed before winter shrink the opening to roughly 1 centimeter high, small enough for bees to pass through but too small for mice to enter. Some Amish beekeepers go further, installing metal entrance guards with bee-sized holes that absolutely prevent mouse entry. These guards are critical because once a mouse establishes residence inside a hive, removal becomes extremely difficult without destroying the colony. The mouse must be trapped and removed. But doing so in midwinter requires opening the hive when it's dangerously cold. Woodpeckers present a different kind of winter threat. These birds discover that hive walls contain a protein-rich meal of bees inside. They peck holes through wooden hive bodies, reaching the cluster and eating bees directly, or causing enough disturbance that bees break cluster to defend, then freeze in the process. Woodpecker damage isn't just about the bees eaten. The holes they create allow cold air to pour into the hive, destroying the cluster's carefully maintained temperature gradient. Traditional Amish woodpecker protection involves wrapping hives in hardware cloth or chicken wire, creating a barrier that prevents birds from reaching the wood. Some beekeepers lean boards or metal sheets against the hive's most vulnerable sides. Others rely on hive placement near buildings or under tree cover where woodpeckers are less active. The key is preventing access while maintaining the hives. Ventilation and the beekeeper's ability to perform winter checks. Wind is technically not a predator, but it kills bees just as effectively. Brutal winter winds at -20 degrees Celsius create wind chill effects that dramatically increase the heat loss from hive walls. A cluster that could maintain 35 degrees Celsius core temperature in still air struggles when constant wind strips away warmth. The Amish site, their apiaries, with wind protection in mind, behind barns, near tree lines, were surrounded by temporary windbreaks made from hay bales, snow fencing, or wooden pallets. Snow accumulation requires active management. Light snow around the hive base actually provides additional insulation, welcome protection, but heavy snow drifting against the hive entrance blocks ventilation and traps bees inside. The Amish regularly clear snow from hive entrances after storms, ensuring bees can make cleansing flights on warmer days and that ventilation pathways remain open. Some beekeepers install small roof structures above entrances that prevent direct snow accumulation while allowing airflow. Skunks occasionally cause winter problems by scratching at hive entrances at night, attempting to lure bees out where they can be eaten. Late winter changes. Around late January, even with -20 degrees Celsius temperatures outside, something extraordinary begins inside the hive. The queen breaks her winter dormancy and starts laying eggs again, triggered by increasing daylight rather than warmth. This seems risky, but it's brilliant timing. Bees born in late February will emerge as workers in mid-March, perfectly timed for spring's first flowers. However, this brood production dramatically increases resource demands. Developing larvae need constant 35 degrees Celsius warmth and protein-rich feeding, causing honey consumption to spike from half a pound to nearly a full pound daily. This creates the most dangerous period. Face starvation in late February, dying just weeks before salvation arrives. The cluster expands to accommodate growing brood, and on warmer days above 10 degrees Celsius, scout bees venture out seeking the earliest pollen from willow catcons or crocus blooms. The Amish remain vigilant during this critical transition, knowing many colonies perish during spring dwindle. Spring emergence success. When spring finally arrives, this exceptional rate reflects traditional methods and strong genetics. The first warm day above, Amish beekeepers assess colony strength by observing these flights. Large enthusiastic clouds indicate healthy colonies, while weak trickles suggest severe losses. Strong colonies display 6 to 8 frames covered with bees and healthy brood patterns. Dead colonies tell their stories through forensic evidence. Bees stuck in cells indicate starvation. Colonies that proved their genetic quality through winter's harshest test. These become the foundation for expanding the apiary, while weak survivors are requeened, continuing the Amish tradition of natural selection and sustainable beekeeping. So there you have it, the incredible winter survival story happening inside 50 Amish beehives at -20 degrees Celsius, from the perfectly engineered cluster formation to the queen's protection. From heat generation to spring emergence, nature's design is absolutely remarkable. The Amish wisdom of trusting natural processes over modern technology proves itself year after year. If you found this fascinating, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us what surprised you most. Next time, we're exploring traditional Amish maple syrup production. Until then, stay curious and keep learning from the wisdom of simple living.